If you've been dying to know about UPREITs, pretty sure this is your video. You probably have a real estate property that you're thinking about selling. Maybe you're tired of it. The property management is a pain in the butt. You're over it. You like the idea of selling it and getting a nice passive investment that sends you cash flow, which is wonderful. That's, in fact, the dream. You diversify your investment, your equity in that one property into a ton of different properties, hopefully run by a large professional real estate firm with a great track record, audited financials. You could sleep at night peacefully, calmly, just knowing that your investment is in good hands and you no longer have to deal with it. Does that sound like most people that want to do a 1031 exchange into a REIT? I think so. And so the only way you can really do that is through an UPREIT. That's a lot different than doing a 1031 exchange where you sell one property and go buy another property with those proceeds. Restarting the depreciation cycle and, of course, deferring your taxes even further. And you can go do that indefinitely. Hopefully, though, we'll see what Congress says over the next 20 years about 1031 exchanges. They always threaten to get rid of it. They never do it. Maybe that's because they also own a lot of real estate. Anyways, back to UPREIT. There are two kinds of UPREITs. The first UPREIT path is probably preferable, but it's very hard to pull off. You would be selling your property in exchange for shares in a publicly traded REIT in this scenario. Now, you probably can only do this if you have a very large asset, maybe 30 million and above, that a REIT would be interested in the first place. The bigger, the better, right? Because there are complicated legal documents. It's a pain in the rear to get this done. They'd probably much rather just buy your property in cash and be done with it and move on versus taking on a new investor, giving them OP units, which are operating partnership units, which you can then convert to REIT shares at your convenience and pay the taxes when you make that conversion. Have the same underlying benefits as the underlying REIT shares, but that is the publicly traded version of an UPREIT. Sell the property to a giant REIT, you get their shares. If you have a warehouse, a distribution facility, you would sell to maybe Prologis, you would get their shares. They've had a tremendous track record. They're the best in the business. You feel really comfortable about owning shares of Prologis and getting a smaller dividend, but still having a great total return profile if they are able to perform like they have in the past. Or if you have an apartment building, maybe you sell to Avalon Bay, Equity Residential, MAA, Camden out of Houston, giant apartment building REITs. You would sell the property to them and get operating partnership units in their REIT, which once again you can convert at your convenience. Now, the much more common version of an UPREIT is actually a two-step process. And that's actually the process that we're highlighting in this slide here, which is not about a specific recommendation. We're just using it as an example. So this process is actually a 721 exchange through a DST, where you have this 2-year holding period before the ultimate REIT can option your shares into the larger, much more diversified portfolio, the REIT, where then you have that same process where you can sell your shares as you like and then pay the taxes as you go, or hold indefinitely and collect your distributions as a passive investor. Okay, so that's a basic explanation. Now, I know that's a little complicated, so let's add a graphic to this to explain it. All right, let's use this graphic to further explain that process because sometimes it's just a little easier when you can see it graphically. So you sell your property, you're technically doing a 1031 exchange, but once again, you're doing it into a portfolio that you don't control here. First, the DST, where you have a fractional interest with other investors. Sometimes it's one large property, but often it's a sub-portfolio, smaller portfolio of the larger mothership, the larger REIT that you expect to get into after 2 years. So you stay in that sub-portfolio, that DST, for 2-3 years until the mothership decides to go ahead and exercise its options to purchase the sub-portfolio and fold it in to the larger REIT, which is much more diversified. It's going to be a lot more properties typically than just the DST sub-portfolio. Now, oftentimes the mothership will create some sort of master lease. The larger portfolio will basically backstop your distribution payments, the rents of the underlying properties in the sub-portfolio, getting into the weeds, but it's just giving you added confidence that you're not taking a flyer on some small property or small portfolio during that interim period before the larger REIT exercises its shares and gives you those REIT shares, which is the UPREIT part of this transaction, right? And so the experience should look pretty similar from when you're in the DST to when you're in the REIT. And so all this sounds a little complicated, but at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. You're just adding another step in the DST process. that 2-3 year holding period before you get shares in the larger portfolio. So hopefully that helps you understand the DST 721 exchange process. I think it is worth getting to know this process because if you are over managing real estate, this is a much easier way. And you're able to invest oftentimes with an institutional firm that owns billions and billions of dollars of real estate with a great track record and arguably in a much safer position than if you were running a real estate property that you were tired of managing, that you were annoyed by. Maybe you don't jump on every property emergency like you once did 10, 20 years ago, however long you've held that asset. And so I think it's worth going through this process. It used to be this industry was just filled with scam artists and people that would just go for fees. They would have these fee machines where they would charge you 10% right out of the gate on commissions. They'd mark up the portfolio of the DST here as if they created a bunch of value before you purchased the property, even though they just purchased it recently. And so this industry used to have a lot of bozos in it 10, 20 years ago. It has since been cleaned up dramatically. It's still filled with reasonable actors, but subpar opportunities, I would argue. You definitely don't want to go through this just to save on the taxes and end up putting yourself in poor real estate, right? That's letting the tail wag the dog. You want to make sure that you're investing in great real estate with a world-class operator. And then the taxes are a cherry on top. It's effectively a bonus versus just going into whatever first DST you could find because it was sold to you. You're not quite sure you like the real estate, but you just really don't want to pay the taxes. I think that is the 100% wrong way to go about doing a 1031 exchange, UPREIT transaction. The only reason you want to do this is if you end up in a great investment first. Taxes are, once again, a bonus. All right. So if you want to learn more about this process, get a little further into the weeds, and you have an upcoming sale of a property and you want to talk about this, you can just shoot us an email and somebody's going to get back to you, get your particulars, and perhaps we can set up a call and see if we can help you. Okay. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you for your time.